Taiwan's military holds coastal defense drills and practices what to do if the enemy does make it to land.
Well, pardon me for being late. We had a great meeting with NATO, the Secretary General, and we're going to do something a little different for this country.
U.S. President Donald Trump makes a big announcement on a deal with NATO on arms to Ukraine.
Tremendous impact right now, what's happening right now.
Taiwan's textile producers weigh in on how they're responding to the uncertainties of Trump's tariffs. Plus, it's been 38 years since martial law was lifted in Taiwan. We look at how far the country has come on its democratic journey. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Leading off with our top story, what would happen if Taiwan were unable to stop an enemy invasion? Well, that's what Taiwan's military is trying to practice on day 7 of the annual Han Kuang exercises. Our defense reporter Jaime Okan was with the Army to see their training.
In the outlying islands of Penghu in the Taiwan Straits, soldiers practice firing at sea, using as many weapons as they can to prevent an enemy from making it ashore. It's part of Taiwan's strategy to deter a possible Chinese invasion. But in northern Taiwan, soldiers are practicing what would happen if things didn't go according to plan. Simulating an enemy that has landed and is pushing inland, Taiwan's military is learning how to regroup.
那个其实就是不断的借由这个部队的退后，吸引中共的进攻部队持续的往我们设伏圈、包围圈里面去深入，然后等到进入这个包围圈的主抵抗线的时候，理论上部署在各方的火力。
The scenario comes on day 7 of Taiwan's Han Kuang military exercise, which tests the country's defenses against an all-out attack from China. But this year, the drills are more realistic and include exercises that Taiwan might not be prepared for. A big part of this year's Han Kuang military exercises is assuming the worst-case scenario. And that's why Taiwan's military is simulating what would happen if it lost control of the strategic area near the country's capital. This area is close to what Taiwan's military calls a red beach, a suitable landing area that's close to key infrastructure that could make Taiwan vulnerable. This beach has a constant military presence and is used every year to simulate an enemy invasion.
I think the prime target for that is really the port of Taipei itself and the Bali beach right next to it, and also the opening to the Tamsui River that can lead you right into the heart of Taipei and be within the heart of the government district of Taipei in 10 to 15 minutes.
That's why Taiwan is trying to break away from past habits and use the Han Kuang exercise to test new strategies to add to its overall defense plan. While preventing an enemy from reaching the shore is Plan A, drills like this one help Taiwan create an effective Plan B. Eason Chen and Jaime Okan in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Paraguay is preparing for a visit from Taiwan President Lai Ching-te in August. That's according to an announcement from Paraguayan President Santiago Peña. The country is one of Taiwan's 12 remaining diplomatic allies, but Taiwan's presidential office has not confirmed the visit, and Taiwan's foreign ministry said it has no information to provide. The trip would reportedly also include Guatemala and Belize and could include stopovers in the U.S. Taiwanese presidents have previously visited Central and South America via the U.S. China's foreign ministry responded to the news, saying it opposes any Taiwanese leaders visiting the U.S. Japan says China's increasing military activity in the surrounding region could have a serious impact on its security. In an annual defense white paper, Japan noted several encroachments by the Chinese military over the past 12 months, including a Chinese military aircraft entering its airspace last August. The report also cited 2 separate incidents in which a Chinese aircraft carrier sailed through Japan's economic waters, most recently in June. China called it routine training. In response to these growing security risks, Japan has stepped up its defense spending in recent years and bolstered its ties with the U.S. and other allies. U.S. President Donald Trump says Ukraine is getting Patriot missiles and threatened secondary tariffs on Russia that could push countries to stop doing business with it. John Van Trieste has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump is turning up the pressure on Russia to end its war in Ukraine. He's met with the chief of NATO and decided that Ukraine is going to get more Patriot missile systems, which are critical to its defense. But this isn't a gift from the United States. European allies will send Ukraine systems they already have on hand and buy replacements from Washington.
Well, pardon me for being late. We had a great meeting with NATO, the Secretary General, and we're going to do something a little different for this country. We're going to supply weapons to NATO at a large amount. They're going to deliver the weapons, and they're going to pay for 100% of the weapons.
Still, the deal reflects Trump's growing frustration with Russia's President Vladimir Putin as the war rages on. And there's more. He's giving Russia 50 days to agree to a peace deal. Otherwise, the U.S. will do something it's avoided so far, sanctioning those countries that still buy Russian exports with 100% tariffs. This could scare off nations that until now had kept buying products like Russian oil. That idea has rare bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress. Trump and NATO haven't always had the smoothest relationship. But today, he and NATO Secretary General are on the same page.
So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you were planning to do in 50 days and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for them.
News of the 50-day reprieve saw stocks and the ruble rise on the Moscow market. Still, analysts say it's Russia's move now, as that grace period starts to run out.
So Putin is going to have to realize over the 50 days or sooner that he's not winning and can't win. And he can't wait us out. That's his only strategy.
In both Russia and Ukraine, there is some uncertainty about whether Trump will come through and what his motives may be.
Donald Trump is a man who is doing politics mixed with show business. And what he says should always be questioned because he is a very emotional person.
In fact, we have already heard about this because this is not the first Trump statement regarding sanctions related to Russia. And it seems to me that these 50 days are some additional advantage for some political restructuring, in particular in favor of America, because America obviously sees some benefits in cooperation with Russia.
Still, after more than 3 years of fighting, the stakes might be rising as the West appears to come together. Ethan Pan and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Drones and solar components may soon be targeted by U.S. tariffs. The U.S. Commerce Department launched investigations into imports of drones, drone components, and polysilicon, a material used in solar panels. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the probe under a law allowing him to tariff goods considered crucial to national security. If it finds that those goods do pose a threat to U.S. security, the president can impose levies on them. The Finance Ministry says it will keep the National Financial Stabilization Fund circulating in Taiwan's stock market. Taiwan's finance authority mobilized the fund in April and injected $262 million into the local stock market. That's after U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies sent global markets tumbling. The ministry decided Monday to keep the fund in the market as Taiwan continues tariff negotiations with the U.S. The impact of U.S. tariff policies is already being seen for some of Taiwan's exporters, but it's also prompting many companies to become more resilient. Reporter Ai Chi takes a look at how one industry is navigating global headwinds.
像我们这个东西，这一系列所有的产品，它都是保特瓶做的。
Entrepreneur Sam Hong is in a tough spot. His firm, HFI, supplies eco-friendly fabrics to major international brands, like the North Face and Lululemon. After U.S. President Donald Trump threatened widespread tariffs in April, including 32% on Taiwanese goods, Han has had to think of ways to minimize the impact. And although those tariffs are not paused, for now, he's already seen some difficulties with customers.
There is tremendous impact right now, what's happening right now, yes. They can't just absorb all the import tariff, and they're gonna come ask for a little bit help for a better price. When they are big and they got a bargain power, you take it or leave it. I mean, it's not easy.
HFI's customer base is overwhelmingly American, making uncertainty in global trade an especially tough problem. So Han has now started branching out.
I try to not diversify not my product, also my market. Hopefully try to penetrate every market I can.
Han's company isn't alone. Taiwan's textile industry depends heavily on exports and mostly operates business to business. And he has strong ties with international customers, especially in the US, and with factories in Southeast Asia, where some countries have also been hit with high tariffs. That means rising costs are forcing brands to pay closer attention to managing expenses.
他们明显的呈现一个观望的一个状况。那所谓观望，就是说他们对新的订单的一个在下订单的速度上面讲，事实上有趋缓。
Industry insiders say the tariffs have also pushed Taiwan's textile firms to improve across multiple fronts.
在这样的情况之下呢，那台湾纺织产业采取大概有几个面向。第一个可能是在整个的一个业主产品高值化。那第二个呢，当然是希望说在做这个永续经营永续的一个发展。第三个是在这个所谓的一个数位转型。第四个是寻求产业共荣。
The textile sector is just one of several in Taiwan looking to offset the impact of U.S. tariffs. The U.S. is Taiwan's second largest export market, surpassing China to become #1 in February and June this year, meaning Taiwan relies heavily on the U.S. market. After tariffs was first announced in the spring, many Taiwanese companies were flooded with orders from the U.S., with customers hoping to get ahead of the levies. But economists now worry this could spell trouble later on in the year.
在现阶段很难找到一个替代的市场，但是它的这个挑战就是美国的投入要素成本是非常高，而且比这些新兴市场高很多。那这个是不是厂商呢到美国直接去投资呢？如果说没有规模经济的话，是不是有获利的机会呢？这个是厂商必须要考虑的。
Economists say Taiwan needs to be more proactive navigating these uncertainties by strengthening its position in supply chains.
那这个方法提升位阶的话，就是说让这个产品的这个替代效果降低啦，在市场上的对我们特定的产品的需求会持续的增强。
Taiwan is still in trade talks with the U.S., hoping to reach a deal that will shield it from the worst of the tariffs. But in the meantime, it's companies like Han's HFI that are left with the fallout of U.S. trade policy and who must now take steps to be resilient for the next big shock. Alex Chen and Ai Chi from TaiwanPlus.
U.S. tech giant NVIDIA says it will soon resume shipments of one of its advanced AI chips to China. The company says the U.S. government has agreed to grant export licenses for its H20 chip, a model designed specifically for the Chinese market. NVIDIA developed the chip after Washington imposed export controls in late 2023, citing national security concerns. But in April, sales were halted again under new restrictions introduced by U.S. President Donald Trump. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is currently visiting Beijing to shore up the Chinese market just days after meeting with Trump and top officials in Washington. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing.
And I welcome the opportunity to set out Australia's views and interests and our thinking on how we can maintain peace, security, stability and prosperity in our region.
She said China is ready to deepen ties with Australia after overcoming a setback in their relationship. Albanese stressed the importance of dialogue and regional stability. He said Australia welcomed the prospect of expanding a 10-year-old free trade agreement, while Chinese officials also proposed cooperating on artificial intelligence. Coming up after the break. Taiwan's student fencers get ready to say en garde as they prepare for the upcoming World University Games.
Start your weekend with a cup of coffee and a moment to reflect on what happened this week.
Hello and welcome.
We've got you covered, from defense and politics to high tech and the arts.
Not just to Taiwan, the whole world is watching.
You make the coffee, we make the news. Here's what happened on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Leslie Liao in Paris, France, and this is TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia. Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Leaders from one of Taiwan's indigenous groups are fighting for official status for their people, a battle they say has gone on for too long. Reese Ayers reports from Taipei.
Urgent calls for justice here in Taipei as the Siraya Indigenous community fight for recognition. The Siraya is one of Taiwan's Plains indigenous groups. Its leaders are urging all branches of government to finally acknowledge them as one of Taiwan's officially recognized indigenous groups. There are currently 16. Such recognition would give them access to more legal rights, protections and resources. The push follows a 2022 Constitutional Court ruling affirming their identity. But nearly 3 years later, the Council of Indigenous Peoples has yet to submit their case for final approval. And the Siraya are tired of waiting. Indigenous leaders are also challenging proposed legislation they say would prevent individual ethnic groups within the wider Plains indigenous peoples from attaining the highest level of recognition. Protesters have invited President Lai to talk on the issue, one they say he has supported in the past, but has neglected to see through to the end. By Thursday this week, the legislature is expected to have a verdict for the Siraya people, a decision that will define their future status as one of Taiwan's many indigenous communities. Klein Wang and Reese Ayers in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's labor minister has promised to find ways to better protect the rights of migrant fishers.
透过社会对话过程的实践，希望能更充分地表达各界目前对于大家都很关注的远洋渔工的权益问题，来做更进一步的寻找共识跟这个改善的解方哦。
Hong made the comments after the latest round of labor consultation with EU officials. It follows a CNN report citing alleged abuses of migrants employed on Taiwanese distant water fishing boats. Those included injuries, a preventable death, and unpaid wages. The fisheries agency has said that Taiwan has zero tolerance for these violations. Multiple fishery associations say the CNN report lacks objectivity as it fails to mention efforts to improve the situation. Tuesday marks a symbolic day in Taiwan's democratic history. The lifting of martial law in 1987 was one of the key events that set the stage for its transition from dictatorship to democracy. 38 years later, the country is preparing for another unprecedented political moment, as a mass recall vote in late July could see up to 24 lawmakers lose their seats. Issy Wells looks at how we got here.
So this is my VIP room.
Fred Chin spent a year and a half in this cell for a crime he didn't commit. In 1971, aged just 21, he was a Malaysian student in Taiwan when he became accused of bombing a US government office. He would go on to spend 12 years in prison, detained and tortured first here at the Jingmei Detention Center in New Taipei, then in Taiwan's notorious jail for political prisoners on Green Island. To this day, he still doesn't know why he was singled out.
Sometimes I will stand here and look out through the window. I try to find some explanation why I was in this room.
Qin was just one of many people targeted by the nationalist Kuomintang government led by Chiang Kai-shek, which had taken over Taiwan at the end of World War II in 1945. Martial law was declared in 1949, and it would not be lifted for nearly 40 years. It remains a dark period of repression in Taiwan's history, often referred to as the White Terror, where as many as 200,000 people were imprisoned. Martial law was finally lifted on July 15, 1987.
It was a very brutal, authoritarian form of martial law. Many thousands of dissidents were arrested, and many were killed. And so the symbolic end of that moment, even though there were many events that led up to it, represented a really important step in Taiwan's democratization. Probably the single most important symbolic moment.
But while that date was important, Qin says it wasn't until 5 years later, in 1992, when further legal reforms were made, that political prisoners like himself were truly free to speak out without fear of repercussions, and that the White Terror was officially over. Although the memories still haunt him, Qin continues to lead tours through the former detention center where he was once held, now a memorial park. Etched into the walls here, over 12,000 names of confirmed victims of political persecution, including his own. For Qin, revisiting these painful times is essential to safeguarding Taiwan's hard-won democracy.
If you don't see the importance of remembering the past, if you just enjoy the democracy and freedom, if you don't pay attention to preserve it, then the tragedies in the past could possibly happen and reoccur in any time in the future.
2025 marks 38 years since the end of 38 years of martial law. Taiwan has been free of military rule for as long as it's spent under it. And in the years since, Taiwan has checked off the milestones of its democratic development: the legalization of other political parties, like the now ruling Democratic Progressive Party, the first direct presidential election, the first peaceful transfer of political power, all driven by social activism in opposition to single-party authoritarian rule. In today's Taiwan, officials are freely elected and may be freely removed if voters are unhappy with them, as can be seen in the current mass recall movement, which is targeting the seats of dozens of lawmakers.
Obviously, with the end of martial law and the constitutional reform in the early 1990s and all of the political the changes and institutional changes that were enabled by the end of martial law, that's created the political conditions where recalls can happen. I think you can understand the current movement in the long history of social movement activism. So it is part of that long history, and clearly the DPP has tried to locate it within that history.
Today's Kuomintang, now a democratic party and currently in the opposition, sees things differently. It says it's now being persecuted, as all 26 legislators up for recall later in July are from the KMT. It's a reminder that the traumatic legacy of martial law still echoes across Taiwan's political landscape. What is certain is that without the country's hard-won freedoms and the resilience of survivors like Fred Chin, the right of Taiwanese people to choose and recall their leaders and representatives wouldn't be part of today's democratic reality. Howard Chang, Alex Chen and Izzy Wells for TaiwanPlus.
A Taiwanese space firm has failed to become the first foreign company to successfully launch a space rocket from Japan. Thai Space fired its rocket from Hokkaido in northern Japan on Saturday, but within a minute of liftoff, the rocket started to wobble and fell back to Earth. Thai Space has yet to successfully launch a rocket, with another failed attempt in Australia in 2022. The 2025 World University Games are set to kick off on Wednesday, with athletes from around the world already on their way to the event, including Taiwan's top fencers. Our reporter Sandy Chi caught up with them during training.
Taiwan's fencing team is aiming to bring home the country's first medal in the sport at the 2025 World University Games in Germany this summer. The competition is an important multi-sports event for university athletes around the world. This year, a total of 9 fencers are representing Taiwan under the name Chinese Taipei.
应该说，我们男子队舰，我们这次派出的就是4个代表，
对，然后他们分别是打个人赛跟团体赛，然后接下来我们还会有男子盾剑，还有女子锐剑。
Among the male fencers is Chen Yitong, who competed in Paris last summer. He was Taiwan's first male Olympic fencer in 36 years. He says the team has been training hard.
我觉得我们训练就很全方面，可是就是有比较 focus 在我们的可能反应跟敏捷，然后可能还要在场上对打的节奏。
The spotlight is also on the only female epee fencer on the team, Mia Wu, who began fencing at the age of 11. She is representing Chinese Taipei for the first time at this year's Games.
I'm really proud of how hard I worked for this university games, and I'm super excited to compete, and I hope everything goes well. I would love to be top 4 at least to get that medal, but I really want to try my best and just show how hard I trained and my abilities and capabilities.
With the games set to kick off this Wednesday, Taiwan's top fencers are ready to fight their way to glory and secure their spot on the podium. Chrisma and Sanichi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, let's head to Paris to check out the fireworks and drone show lighting up the sky around the Eiffel Tower, part of the Bastille Day celebrations. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.